There are a few plants that become regulars in your garden, not just because they grow well, but because over time they earn your trust. You know what to expect from them, you know where they fit, and when the planting season comes around, you don't really have to think too hard about whether they're coming back. For me, Orange Paruche is one of those plants. It's my favorite cherry tomato to grow, and I've been growing it for many years now. That's saying something, because in this garden, I don't have unlimited tomato space. I'm not growing tomatoes in a big field or even in a large in-ground vegetable garden. I'm growing them here in my driveway garden, mostly in half whiskey barrels and large containers. So let me tell you about this tomato. Some may even call this my ode to the Orange Paruche Cherry Tomato. When I choose a tomato, I'm not just slipping one more plant into the garden, I'm giving it one of my big containers. I'm giving it a bamboo stake, and I'm sweating over whether that's even going to work given the weight of the plant. I'm giving it regular watering, and I'm giving it the whole season of attention. That tomato really has to earn its barrel, and Orange Paruche does. The reason I started growing Orange Paruche wasn't because I had studied all the disease-resistant charts or because I was trying to solve some technical tomato problem. I started growing it for the simple reason I love the flavor. I like a really sweet cherry tomato. That's what drew me to orange cherry tomatoes in the first place. They just tasted sweeter to me. Brighter, fruitier, almost tropical. The kind of tomato you eat while standing in the garden and somehow never quite manage to bring inside. Sun Gold is probably the most famous one in this category, and for good reason. A Sun Gold tomato warm off the vine is one of those things that makes you understand why people get obsessed with growing tomatoes. But over time, I found the Orange Paruche gave me that same kind of sweet orange cherry tomato experience, and it fits my garden better. Orange Paruche is often listed at 9 to 9.7 on the Brick scale, which puts it right in that very sweet cherry tomato category. Sun Gold is also famously sweet, often listed around 8 to 9 bricks, though in a real garden, the number can vary quite a bit depending on ripeness, watering, weather, and when you pick the fruit. So I don't really think of the Orange Paruche as simply having a higher bricks than Sun Gold. I think of it as being in that same super sweet orange cherry tomato class, but with a better balance for the way I garden. I'm not choosing tomatoes based on a catalog description alone. I'm choosing based on what happens in this driveway garden, in these containers, here in Portland, and with our weather. The split resistance is something I appreciated later. That was not the reason I first started growing it, but after growing Orange Paruche for years, it has become one of the reasons I keep coming back to it. Cherry tomatoes split when the plant suddenly takes up water, and the inside of the fruit swells faster than the skin can stretch. That can happen after rain and uneven watering, or even when a container dries down and gets deep watering. In a half whiskey barrel, that matters. A half whiskey barrel gives a tomato a good amount of root space, but it's still a container. It doesn't buffer moisture the same way a large in-ground bed can. The barrel can dry down, then get water, then dry down again. A tomato that can handle those moisture swings is really useful. That's one of the things I've observed with the Orange Paruche in my own garden. It doesn't split nearly as much as some other sweet cherry tomatoes I've grown. And that changes the experience of growing it. Because productivity is not just about how many tomatoes a plant can technically produce. It's about how many good tomatoes you can actually get to harvest and eat. A tomato plant can be loaded with fruit, but if half of them split after a rain or after a watering swing, then the real harvest is smaller than it looks. Orange Paruche gives me more usable fruit, and in a small garden, usable fruit matters. That's really the balance I like about this tomato. It has the sweetness and flavor that made me want to grow it in the first place, but it also has enough durability that I'm not constantly frustrated by cracked fruit. It's not just sweet, it's dependable. I haven't seen any publicly available information on the exact breeding history of the Orange Paruche. It is an F1 hybrid, so I don't have the full breeding pathway, but the goal seems pretty clear when you grow it. It sits in that space between flavor and durability. With some cherry tomatoes, the route to crack resistance is a thicker skin. That works, but it changes the eating experience. You get a tomato that holds together better, but it can feel a little tougher in the mouth. Orange Paruche seems to solve this problem in a better way. The skin is still tender enough that it feels like a fresh eating cherry tomato, more similar to the Sun Gold. I've seen some commentators suggest it was bred for the skin to be flexible rather than thick, So the Orange Paruche is acting like it has a pair of spandex over it when the surge of water causes the inevitable swelling inside. That analogy makes sense to me based on my experience with growing this tomato. I think the downside is, although it doesn't crack, the tomatoes do tend to start to taste more watery, less flavorful, kind of diluted, just not as good under those conditions. Nevertheless, the fruit does hold together better than you might expect from something this sweet, and in that way, I feel like it's been bred to be more practical in the garden. That's a sweet spot for me. I don't need a cherry tomato that ships across the country. I need a cherry tomato that can grow in a half whiskey barrel, handle Portland's ups and downs, and taste wonderful when I'm walking through the garden. And it also has to still be worth the space it takes up, and Orange Paruche does all of that. This is not a small or delicate plant. It's a vigorous, indeterminate cherry tomato. In my garden, that means I should give it real support. If you've seen my prior videos, I've talked about my experiment here with using a single stake in the center of the whiskey barrels. I think it might work, particularly if I'm keeping the tomato trimmed back so it's not too bushy, but I would not put this in a small patio pot and expect it to behave itself. You need a container with enough root space, like my half whiskey barrel, and you need something to support it if you don't want to take some of the risk that I am here. Something strong like a cage or a trellis. You still want to stay ahead of it because it's going to want to climb. It's going to want to branch. And you really don't want it to turn into a large tomato jungle. I think it's best to keep it supported and try to keep enough airflow throughout the plant. As an added bonus, Orange Paruche does have some useful disease resistance bred in. It's commonly listed with resistance to Fusarium wilt and mosaic viruses, which is one of the advantages of growing an F1 hybrid. That doesn't mean it's immune to all tomato problems, though. I still have to consider the airflow. You don't want to crowd the plant. I don't think my basil and small French marigolds will crowd it, but you want to pay attention to how much you're putting in a container if you're growing your tomatoes in a container like I am. The other thing I appreciate about this tomato is the timing. Orange Paruche is usually listed at around 67 days to maturity, which is useful here in Portland. We don't always get a long, hot, predictable tomato season. Sometimes summer takes its time arriving. Sometimes the tomato sits here waiting for real heat. And then just when everything starts producing, fall starts to creep back in. I like tomatoes that don't need an entire summer to get going. Orange Paruche has been reliable enough in my garden that I keep coming back to it. It fits the way I garden. It fits the size of my space. It fits the kind of cherry tomato that I actually like to eat. That's why this tomato has become my favorite cherry tomato. It's not because it's rare or trendy. It's not because I'm trying it for the first time and hoping the catalog description is true. It's because I've grown this one for years in my garden, and it's earned its place. Every container here is an opportunity cost. If Orange Paruche is growing in one of them, something else isn't. I could grow another pepper. I could grow a different tomato. I could use that container for more flowers or herbs or another experiment. But Orange Paruche has made the case for itself. It gives me the sweetness and excitement that drew me to orange tomatoes in the first place, but with better reliability for the real conditions of my garden. Yes, I'll keep trying other cherry tomatoes. That's part of the fun of gardening here. But Orange Paruche is the standard I keep comparing them against in this driveway garden. It has definitely earned its barrel.
Sun's barely up, mug on the step, steam curling, boots in the mud, breath-making clouds in the morning, row after row, seeds like secrets in my pocket, push them down slow, whisper a hope in each socket. Hands in the dirt, dreams under fingernails, sweat on my shirt, love in the details. Someday this patch of ground will feed more than just me. I'm growing a garden big enough for family. Rain in the drum, Kids in the doorway laughing, wind starts to hum. We keep on weeding and grafting, save all the jars, line them up like little sunsets, planning so far for the plates we haven't set yet. Hands in the dirt, dreams under fingernails, sweat on my shirt, love in the details. Someday this patch of ground will feed more than just me. I'm growing a garden big enough for family.
Well, I have some things that I've still been keeping in the garage. Actually, I brought these out to the outside to harden off, and then it's gotten colder, nights down below 50. And so I've put them back in the garage. Today is now another 80-degree day, so I'm now putting them back outside again. It looks in the weather forecast like we're going to have a couple of days where the nights dip down again to the mid 40s after today. So I'll put them out today, and then maybe tomorrow I will bring them back in for a couple of days, and then hopefully I'll be able to put them out and just leave them out after that. So what I have here is, in this tray, is some yellow crookneck squash. That's what these three things are, and these are summer squashes. And what I'm doing while I'm here, I'll give them a little bit of moisture. They are still okay moist in there, but they're starting to dry a little bit, so it's time to give them some water. But I'm going to pull out the smaller seedlings so that they're not competing with each other. So I'm going to do that while I'm here. And then I think it'd be interesting just to take a look at what it looks like inside there. Okay, not too crowded yet. Hopefully I'll be able to get that hardened off and in the ground soon. Now, let's see, what else do I actually want to put some fertilizer on these as well, because they're in the potting mix. There's no fertilizer in these. Other items that I have here, I have some Armenian cucumbers here, and then I have some lemon cucumbers, 2 lemon cucumbers here. So that's what's going on in this tray. I'm going to do a basic watering first, and then I'll do some fertilizer. And I'm leaving this in the indoor tray here because I am thinking I'm gonna probably put it back out in the garden, or back in the garage tomorrow for a couple of nights, just at the nighttime. These things don't like to be too wet, so I'm just kind of getting it going there. And then I'll get my fertilizer real quick. Okay, so these are ready to go somewhere in the sun, but I'm actually gonna leave them over here off to the side for a second because I haven't filled up the space here, and I think there might be some rearranging to do within trays in order to be more efficient with my use of tray space. I try to use as few trays as possible. It's just easier the logistics are easier if I can use fewer trays. I don't know if I can or not. It kind of depends, and it may require making extra labels for things that I'm mixing and matching too. Okay, I've got another tray here. These, I think, are some winter squashes. Yeah, so I've got some delicata here. And then I've got this Eltham butternut squash. I think that's these here. And then 2 black futsu squashes there. Now, I think looking at this, I've got 1 failed germination here. And at this point, that is not germinated, I'm not going to wait any longer, so I'll put that one off to the side. That one's dead. And then what else do I have here? So this is similar to what we were looking at in the last tray. I want to both give it some water and fertilize it. Check and see if I have multiple plants germinating, which I do here in this one. This is one of the butternuts. I've got 2 there, so I'm going to pull this smaller one out. Rid of that. And then over here, one of the delicata has a second germinating, so I'll get rid of that guy. And now I think that's that. So I am going to give these a little bit of water. Okay. And then a little bit of fertilizer. Oops, there's a second one in this delicata too. There we go, got it. Okay, this tray is ready to go out into the sun, so I'm gonna go find a place for it. Okay, well, I've got a mixed bag of things going on here. Some Howden pumpkins, only one of which has germinated, and I don't know exactly why that is. Could still be working on it. Maybe the heat wasn't right. Maybe it was the seed was too old. Got some Gerardelle here that I planted 2 of, it looks like, and both of those germinated. So I'm gonna get rid of one. Kind of arbitrary which one I chose there. And then I've got some baby boo pumpkins. I have 2 there. They both germinated there. And then the melons, I guess I had 5 of these melons and only 1 has germinated so far, and just barely. So maybe these need more time because maybe it just hasn't been warm enough for them. The melons need a lot of heat. I'm not sure. Maybe it's relatively older seed too. That might be the issue, that I was using older seed for that. But I'm gonna go ahead and give these all some water. And then I'm gonna go ahead and throw some fertilizer in there because we've got the ones that are germinated definitely need it. I'm not gonna fertilize the ones that haven't germinated because they don't need it. And I'll otherwise just set these outside, maybe with the heat today and enough moisture here that will kickstart some of these into germinating. Or maybe I'll have to call it and just throw some of these out at some point here soon. This is just the fertilizer here, liquid soluble fertilizer. I'm gonna go find a place in the sun for this tray and be back for the next piece. All right, well, I think similar to the melons, my sunflowers are just kind of germinating slowly, just from not having an overwhelming amount of heat yet. But I mean, it looks like they're kind of slowly getting there. So I've got the vanilla ice sunflowers here, Velvet Queen sunflowers, and then Teddy Bear sunflowers here. I do have 2 that have germinated here, 2 of the Velvet Queen that have germinated here, but I'm not going to pull that yet because I just gut feeling is that this container that's not going to hurt these 2 for them to let them grow a little bit and see which one actually turns out. And or maybe if I have really low germination, I might actually prick out one and put it in another container to try to get some more sunflowers going that way. So yeah, sunflowers are not very exciting right now, but go ahead, similar to what I've done with the other trays, I'll give these some moisture and then I will some fertilizer to the ones that have germinated, and then we will find a place in the sun for it. These are ready to go. Well, it seems to be the theme of the day that there is spotty germination on the plants, and I don't know why that is in this case. Maybe, yeah, I was speculating something in my head, but I lost it. I really don't know what exactly the cause of the spotty germination is here, but that is the case. And if you followed my prior videos, you know I had another tray of zinnias that did just fine earlier. So there's something going on as I'm later in the season with my germination that isn't working out right now. And we're seeing that. We saw that with some of the pumpkins and cucumbers, and now with the zinnias. And maybe it's just more time. Maybe I've got the temperatures going wrong. Maybe more fungus gnats that it's warmer, and maybe they're causing more of a problem. I see a gnat here and there, but usually, I mean, I saw gnats earlier this year too. I mean, there's usually a little bit of gnats kind of in the mix no matter what. So I'm not I'm not 100% sure. Maybe that is a damping off. It doesn't, it looks like it could be heading towards it, but it doesn't look like classic damping off here in terms of like of the surface isn't crusted over the way, totally crusted over the way I'd expect with your what they call the damping off disease that can come with fungus gnat issues. So not sure, but maybe I'll just hold out hope. If I keep it going a little while longer, we'll get some more germination. And maybe if I am putting this outside, sunlight and those good things, so maybe sunlight will, the direct real sunlight will make a difference here. We will see, and we'll see as I share in the future videos. For now, I'm going to add a little bit of fertilizer to these that have germinated, and away we go. There's a mushroom or two hiding in my stock tank here, growing up around my bok choy. I've heard that's a good sign when it comes to your soil.